So I recently finished my 200 kill streak at Telos for the Grandmaster Combat achievement, and I want to talk about my experience with it. I'll go into detail with the strategies I used after discussing some general tips that I discovered along the way. The 200 kill streak is not an easy task. There are so many things that can end your streak, including things at low enrages. As the streak goes on, the chances of dying only go up. One of the major things I noticed was that my mindset needed to shift if I was going to find the consistency needed to do 200 kills in a row without dying. I needed to be focused and I needed to stay alive every single kill. In order to do that, I made sure of a few things every time I went in. The first thing was I would wait a sufficient amount of time after waking up in the morning before going in. This step also included making sure I fed my caffeine addiction beforehand. The second was making sure my rune pouches, nexus, and charge pack were topped up. And lastly, if I noticed my performance was slipping or my focus was drifting, I would take a break. A few more things I want to discuss are Death Touch darts and the Sign of Life and Ring of Death. Death Touch darts are your ticket out of unwinnable situations. If you have any of these left, it's a good idea to bring them. Important disclaimer, you need to use a ranged ability with the darts equipped for them to go off now. A dart will instantly finish the phase you are currently on. Now for my streak, I chose not to have a defense cape in my max cape, thus not having a Sign of Life. The reason for this is on phase 5, it is reasonable to proc your Ring of Death right before barricading. If you have a Sign of Life, the sign will go off before the Ring of Death. The sign will leave you on half HP and 0 adrenaline, which in most cases will leave you dead immediately after. Whereas the Ring of Death will leave you with all your adrenaline, allowing you to barricade immediately after and finishing the kill. An important consideration is without the sign on high enough enrages, one auto attack off prayer from Telos can kill you instantly. Once I got to about 1400 in rage, I banked my Channeler's Ring and opted to camp the Ring of Death for the rest of the streak. If I procced my Ring of Death on phases 1 through 3, there was no way to finish the kill unless I used darts, but for me, that didn't happen. For my streak, I primarily used magic, but had a necromancy weapon switch for one part of the fight. So naturally, I started with the PvME rotation. In my time learning it, I noticed a few inconsistencies. The rotation is good and fast, but there are too many points where you could lose kills based on damage or crit RNG for a 200 kill streak. So I came up with a few minor changes that would help the consistency a lot and don't sacrifice too much kill time. The first spot where I noticed this inconsistency was on phase 1. Sometimes you get an extra auto, and less often 2 extra autos from Telos before dropping into P2. This makes the tendril mechanic come out earlier on phase 2. There are a few workarounds for this, but none of them are consistent enough. I found if you got one extra auto, you could choose to skip Sonic on P2 entry or cut your Asphyxiate short, both of which require good crits on Asphyxiate. You have the same issue if you get 2 extra autos on P1, where you need to skip Sonic as well as cut Asphyxiate short, and hope you have the Adren to clear the tendril. How I solved this was on the pre-fight dummy, use Natural Instinct. If you have the Invigorating perk, you use 3 basic attacks, then Runic Charge Sonic. Surge in and start the fight as normal. Now you need to do an extra Adren building ability to make the rest of the PvME rotation work. So I Surge, Sun, tag with Soulfire, then Conk before using Ice Barrage, then continuing the rotation as normal. This allows an extra ability on phase 1 to ensure you get extra autos less often, as well as letting you keep your Adrenaline Potion for phase 2. Phase 2 can be done as written, but now you drink your Adrenaline Potion here. If you drop into the phase with less than 70 Adren, use it with your Sonic. If you have more than 70 Adren on phase entry, use it after your staff spec. Having the Adren pot here ensures you never need to rely on the crits for the Adren to use Omni later. This phase gives you your first opportunity to Smoke Cloud as the phase is transitioning from 2 into 3. Smoke Cloud is not needed for the whole kill, but it does make a few key points more consistent. Moving on to phase 3, I found there was a chance, albeit rare, that the phase would drag on a bit long and you could get your Adren drained. A slight change in the rotation removes the chance of the phase dragging on too long. Start the phase as written, but after the combust, use Sonic, then Runic Charge Conk into Omni Power, then Dragon Breath. This is pretty overkill, but the Sonic reduces the costs on Omni Power, and the extra Sonic and D-Breath at the end ensures you end the phase with good adrenaline to start phase 4 with. Phase 4 is the longest and most complicated piece to the whole kill. This is the easiest place to make a mistake that compounds into more and more issues, leaving you in Death's office. The first slight change I make to the PvME rotation is to hold the Asphyxiate until 1.2 seconds are left before using Ember Staff. Note that this does guarantee an auto attack from Telos. This makes Telos phase into Font 1 almost every time. An alternative option for low Adren is to use Ice Barrage, then Asphyxiate until 2.4 seconds, Impact, Impact again, Conk, then D-Breath. I found out while making this video that you can use impact twice. If I knew that, I would have done it during the streak. At this point, the first complication that can get you killed is when the golems don't stack up correctly for you to freeze them all together and far enough away from the spot you're going to stand when you attack Telos again. At this point, remember the green golem's damage doesn't scale on P4, so you can essentially ignore that one if it's the one that's out of place. You have a few options if this happens. The first and better option is to walk around and lure the golems into a block together, ideally between font hits so you don't mess with your timing at all. The second option is to proceed with the font as normal, just ignore the hits you're taking from the golem, and sacrifice the soul split heals you would get on Telos if you could get away from the golems. The last option is to just make sure you freeze the red golem and proceed as normal. Inside font 1, I would anticipate with clear headed and equip the Ring of Death. I'd use Preparation, then 3 magic basic attacks. If you can, it's helpful to switch to Blood Barrage for these basics. Just make sure you switch back to Insight Fear after. Then I would Ice Barrage, Step Away, Runic Charge Concentrated Blast, use Omni Power, and an Ember Staff on Telos. Font 2 is the worst feeling part of Phase 4, and you have a few options for it. If you want to take it slow, you can wait outside the font for a bit before going in, so Anticipate is off cooldown. This removes a lot of the danger in not phasing in time and the golems getting to hit you. You can take this a little faster by getting into the font right after you Nami. If you hold your freedom as long as you can, you'll be okay to freeze the golems and then phase Telos before they can stun you again. The strat I opted for was to debreath Telos, Sonic a golem, Nami as many of the golems as you can, then walk into the font. If you have the adrenaline for it, use Reflect, Dragon Breath, Freedom, Chain, then freeze the golems and step away. If you don't have the adren for Reflect, I would opt to Chain right away, Reflect next, Freedom, Debreath, then freeze. The general idea is to get up to the Reflect adren and build as much adren as you can with AoEs before freezing the golems. To phase Telos into font 3, start by breaking his Freedom with an Ice Auto after freezing the golems. Then use a combination of Wild Magic, Asphyxiate, and then Ember Staff when Asphyxiate gets to 3 seconds. This will phase most of the time, but be prepared to get close enough to debreath Telos if it doesn't phase. You can optionally stall this Wild Magic after freezing the golems, but this adds in some clunkiness when you're trying to release it. Font 3 is pretty straightforward. After phasing Telos, you dive over to it, use Devotion before entering the font, Anticipate, Resonance, Prep, freeze the golems. From here, you're going to switch to Necro, use Threads, Sap, Invoke, Ingenuity of the Humans, and then Volley Telos. If you don't get the preparation in, you don't get Res or Divert at the start of Phase 5. You can get 4 to 5k HP if Telos is near the golem when you hit the volley, but prioritize being on the right prayer if the golems are going to be able to hit you when you use volley. Remember, Necromancy only has a 6 tile attack range. You do have a second option here to stick with magic to clear the phase. You're going to follow everything the same, but after freezing the golems, you're going to Runic Charge Sonic on Telos, Concentrated Blast, and then Omni Power Wild Magic Telos. This will leave you a little lower adrenaline for Phase 5, but it doesn't really matter. Phase 5 is done almost completely as written. Let's start by talking about the movement because you need to be efficient getting into the adren beam. I always run to the left beam when the phase starts. Within 3 squares of Telos, you'll be able to surge and dive to either of the other 2 beams. The only rotation changes I would make is to use Resonance instead of Divert. And if you have either of the beams other than the left, you need to add in an extra basic before Sunshine. If there are red golems, this is Anticipate, and if there are either of the other golems, this is Dragon Breath. Over the duration of the 200 kill streak, you're bound to make a few mistakes, but small mistakes don't have to end your streak. Once you're consistent with the rotation, you start to see the spots throughout the kill that can change slightly, and having a backup plan for those situations will keep you out of Death's office. Let's talk about some stats. Over my attempts to get a 200 kill streak, I did 5 total streaks. The first one I died after 63 kills and lost 1 ZGS. The second one I claimed because I got a Dormant Saren Godbow at 30 kills. The third one I got all the way to 194, stepped out of the second font when I was trying to release my stall and stood there like an idiot with my dart on, wondering why I wasn't throwing it. This is where I found out I needed to use an ability to fire off the dart. From that streak I lost 1 of everything except for a reprisal, and I got to claim 2 orbs. The fourth streak I lost at 22 kills when my client froze. And the final one was the successful 200 kill streak where I claimed 1 of every drop except for a Dormant Staff of Sliske. On the successful streak, I used 1 dart on a phase 4 around 70 kills, and that was the only time in the whole streak where my rod procced. Among all the Grandmaster achievements I've completed so far, this was up there with the most difficult. I think the 200 kill streak is underestimated in terms of difficulty. I thought if you've done 4K, surely you can do a 200 kill streak. You barely make it to 2400 in rage by the end of it. But it doesn't work like that. There are about 70 kills where you can't miss a prayer flick or you have a chance of dying. There are 600 opportunities to step out of a font and get insta killed. There are so many instances on P4 and P5 where messing up movement will get you killed. The 200 kill streak challenges consistency, it challenges focus, and most of all, it challenges patience. I'm sure as time passes, since the new combat changes, people will find really safe and consistent methods to farm kills, but this is how I chose to do it, and I'm happy I can finally use my Telos pet.